Now, tensions appear to be deepening between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and his commander of the armed forces. Media reports say Zelenskyy wants his popular General Valery Zaluzhnyi to step down, but the general has refused. His departure would be the biggest shakeup of Ukraine's military leadership since the Russian invasion. For more now, we're joined by our correspondent Nick Connolly in Kyiv. Nick, why is this conflict between Zelenskyy and his top general coming to a head now?
I think, Terry, we've known for quite some time that the relationship between those top two figures, Zaluzhny and Zelenskyy, haven't been great. I think now, as mentioned in the report there, the issue of mobilization is coming to a head. This is really a situation where you have parents in Ukraine worried about their sons in their late teens, early 20s being called up. They previously haven't been called up. Basically, you have a situation where most of the people who wanted to fight and had military experience have already gone to fight. So now Ukraine is having to look to people with no experience and who potentially don't want to go. And we've seen that Zaluzhny is someone who is able to communicate effectively. He doesn't speak a lot, but when he does give interviews, like to The Economist in November, it really has a lot of weight and gets a lot of attention. That's not something that the presidential office seems very keen on. And even though Zaluzhny was someone that Zelenskyy had hired pre-war, this is someone that he brought into this top leadership position, he is not someone who is that easily biddable and as manageable as other Zelenskyy appointees. So this is really an issue for them, and something that is pretty extraordinary is that it seems that since basically the early months of the war, the government here has been doing unofficial polling to see about Zaluzhny's popularity. This is someone who's never said that he wants to run for office, has no obvious political ambitions, but seemingly his authority is such in Ukrainian society that they are worried about his chances.
If Zaluzhny is removed from his post, if he steps back, what repercussions could that have, Nick?
I think it's twofold. On the one hand, it's about trust here in Ukraine. Basically, since the beginning of this war, political differences have been, for the most part, left aside. You don't have the opposition in parliament challenging the government about the big questions of how this war is fought. There's been this basically kind of unspoken taboo about those kinds of conflict. And Zaluzhny, while he's not oppositional political figure yet, at least, is someone who you get the sense Zelensky's team sees as closer to the previous administration of Poroshenko. So there's a real worry here that if this kind of conflict does escalate, that you'll have people asking themselves, is it worth me fighting if you have the leadership of the government and the army engage in that kind of fighting? So that could really be a blow to morale on the front lines, but also here back in Kyiv and other places behind the front lines. And more internationally, Ukraine now is desperate for more international aid. That kind of consistency in having the same people in command roles, being able to talk to military leadership in Europe and North America is also crucial for Ukraine to get what it needs. And I think there's going to be a real worry that if this kind of internal power struggle becomes too obvious and too pronounced, that actually the willingness in the West to support Ukraine might really take a significant hit.
Nick, thank you very much. As always, our correspondent Nick Connolly there in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. For more on this, I'm joined now by Aresia Lutsevich. She's Deputy Director of the Russia and Eurasia Program and head of the Ukraine Forum at the think tank Chatham House, and joins us from London. Aresia, why is this conflict between Zelenskyy and his top general coming to a head now?
Well, the tensions between General Zaluzhny and President Zelenskyy have started earlier. There were already reports at the end of the year that there is a search of new strategy for this long-haul war. And we've seen the article by General Zaluzhny in The Economist saying there is a certain positional warfare stalemate on the battlefield, while Zelenskyy was actually saying, no, there is a movement of the troops and there is a way forward. So after this unsuccessful ground offensive, because Ukraine has made some success on the Black Sea and around Crimea, but especially on the ground offensive, there seemed to be a disagreement between the commander-in-chief and the general command, President Zelenskyy, about how to continue this war, how many men are needed, and what is the strategy. And most important, what is the kit that Ukrainian army has on the battlefield to achieve these objectives?
Would you say that Zelensky is facing external pressure on this, perhaps from the United States?
I have not seen such information of external pressure. Mainly, this is internal pressure. And as your reporters just said, there is this politics and war. President Zelensky is trying to sustain morale in the society, and it remains high. Over 80% of Ukrainians believe they can win this war. But partially, it's because the normalcy of life in Kiev and in other cities was continued. And if indeed Ukraine goes full-blown into war economy, mobilizes a lot of people, it will be very difficult to maintain that normalcy that President Zelensky was able to do and remain so popular.
What's at stake here in this conflict between Zelensky and his top general?
A lot is in stake. Because if indeed President Zelensky takes this decision, it is unpopular decision. General Zaluzhnyi is hugely popular. He's almost a legend, right? Few people actually seen him alive, but he is this mythic figure. He's also extremely popular among the soldiers on the battlefield for his approach to save life, to protect his troops, and to mitigate this politics of war, where political tasks on the battlefield do not cause a catastrophe on the battlefield. So if indeed Zelensky takes this decision, it will be the first time since the start of the war that it goes against the popular will. He will have to carefully explain it, because he may be blamed for undermining the war effort and unity inside Ukraine. So it's very critical how this is done and what are the public reasons that are communicated to a wider society about this critical move.
What repercussions could a resignation or the firing of Zaluzhnyi have for Ukraine, for Zelensky politically, and for the war effort?
Well, look, this war is reaching a critical point where the 2024 will actually decide the trajectory of the outcome. Many experts agree on that. And this is a preparatory year for Ukraine, either to make a decisive push to prepare for it, the second half of 2024, beginning of 2025, and indeed try to achieve that objective that Zelensky put to restore Ukraine's territorial integrity. And depending on who commands the army and how the army is supplied. And here, I think Western assistance and especially German assistance of long-range missiles comes so critical, because part of the disagreement between the two men could have been the insufficient supply of the armaments on the battlefield that does not match these political objectives that I have described. So whether Ukraine will be able to reach consensus inside between the political and military leadership, and let's remember, in democracy, civilian leadership always prevails. That is why Zelensky has an upper hand to, in a way, drive the strategy of this war. Ukraine remains a democracy, and according to the constitution, Zaluzhnyi can be fired by Zelensky. It's a legal move.
Oresia, thank you very much for talking with us today. That was Oresia Lutsevich, Deputy Director of the Russia and Eurasia Program and head of the Ukraine Forum at Chatham House.